Hey, Kate, what did you eat last night?
I ate multiple bowls of soup. I went to a soup party. My friends Millie and Chuck have a soup party every year around Chuck's birthday, and people bring all kinds of different soup, as you may imagine, as well as other things. And I always make something different. It's a point of pride, but some people make the same things, and that's their spesh. So you could go either way. But I had some sweet potato bisque, which was delicious. Had some sort of Indian spices to it. And a butternut squash soup, which, to be honest, was a little too creamy for my taste. And a tomatillo soup with chicken and Mexican-y sort of spices in there. And it was absolutely delicious.
Wow. Who even heard of a soup party?
I know, it's such a great idea. So
it really is.
A lot of us bring them in a crock pot, and they have like a power strip set up. So we bring our crock pot, and because at first there was not enough burners, and so we worked out the crock pot situation over the years. But there's often like a good 10, 12 different kinds of soup at this party, and it's in January, so it's a lovely party. It's my favorite party of the year. It's also really nice people.
Oh.
And then there were other snacky things like bread and cheese and stuff, which I had a little bit of, but it was really good. Yeah.
Good for you.
Thank you. How about you?
Oh my God. I had a 4-pound lobster.
Wow.
I know, right?
Is that big? I'm assuming that's big for a lobster.
It was really big. And, I'm eating it. And I think this is so interesting because I only get lobster when someone else is paying. Uh-huh. And it was a company thing. And, I don't eat meat, and when I stopped eating meat, it's because I had a really terrible meat experience, and I just found the meat really disgusting. So it didn't start out as sort of like some moral issue. It's just I had a disgusting thing in my mouth. And so over the years, though, it's definitely become more of an ethical issue and a moral issue for me. But I'm always so amazed that like once a year, there I am cracking open an animal. It really just hits me.
Yeah, that was boiled alive.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty terrible.
Good thing it's so expensive.
I know, right? But I was like, but I did sort of thank the little lobster. At least I didn't have to pick him out beforehand, thank God.
Oh, Lord, right? Enough already. Yeah. Hello, and welcome to another episode of You Won't Believe What I Ate Last Night. I'm Kate DeVore.
And I am Rick Fiore.
And this is our ongoing conversation about food, health, weight management, and our endeavor to be and stay healthy in a really tasty world.
With love, kindness, compassion towards ourselves and others.
Today, we're really excited to interview Amanda Skrip, who is going to talk to us about, among other things, how to eat healthily as a vegetarian or using mostly plant-based foods. So Amanda is a wellness educator, a chef, and consultant. For over 10 years, she's helped people initiate or maintain health through natural foods and lifestyle. In addition to working with private clients, Amanda teaches public cooking classes at Whole Foods in Chicago. So welcome, Amanda. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So, Amanda, our first question is, what did you eat last night?
Last night I think I was rushing home, and really quickly I made some like paleo quesadillas. I had these tortillas. They're like coconut and cassava flour. And then I think in them was chicken and baby kale and like a goat cheddar. And so I had that. And then I went, this is a long answer. I'm volunteering with a Syrian refugee family. And we went over there, and then she brought out this giant cake. And I don't eat a lot of dessert, but it was this like giant bundt cake, and she'd already cut pieces. And I think this piece of cake was about the size of my head. And it was really delicious. And then also, so she brought that out. And then she also brought like a filled to the brim glass of soda, like some sort of cola.
Oh, dear.
Which is another food I don't really ever eat. I can't think of the last time I drank that.
Yeah.
And I had like a few polite sips of that. I did enjoy the cake. It was really delicious. And then after that, I thought I was in the clear. And then she brought out like a giant platter of fruit. And she made a plate for everyone with like an orange, a banana, and a big thing of grapes on it.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
But it was very much like, why aren't you eating your orange and your banana? So yeah, it was a little bit of a different night last night.
Wow. So does that coconut tortilla that you use taste like coconut?
Not at all.
Really?
Flour doesn't really. Siete Foods is the brand. They also make an almond flour brand. and they have a coconut and chia and a coconut and cassava, but they're incredibly delicious tortillas, even if you take the like health aspect out of them. I think they're so good. They were started by a Mexican grandmother who I think her grandchildren were diagnosed with, they had to follow a strict anti-inflammatory diet. And so the Mexican grandmother was like, my grandchildren need to have good tortillas. So she developed these recipes. And yeah, they're really, really good.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
So what would you say makes you unique in the world of health and nutrition coaches? And what exactly is a lifestyle coach? I asked you two questions at once, but you can answer that how you want.
Yeah. So I think, as far as that, I'm also like a trained chef, specifically in, health supportive dietary techniques. So I think that's really helpful because sometimes you can like tell people what they should eat or how to eat or, foods that would be good. But if you don't have a clue as to like how to prepare them or how to make it simple, it could be overwhelming.
Yes.
So I think that either through a lot of my private clients I do like little mini cooking demos with, or they come to my cooking classes, or even being able to share recipes and talk about that, I think is helpful. And then the lifestyle piece of it, just wellness in general, it's a big wheel and food is just like one cog in it. So I think I've started in the past few years focusing on a lot of other aspects of wellness. So I do a lot of I've started doing some like mindful food and mindfulness workshops. So kind of making that a part of it. And then also getting more into just natural lifestyle things in general of, how to make over your like personal care routines and your, your medicine cabinets and that type of stuff of just kind of in general focusing on more natural, holistic remedies and things like that.
Do you ever do what they do on all those reality shows? Do you go in and just throw people's stuff into the trash and make them carry it out?
Yeah, I don't know if it's like quite as dramatic, but you do, and you see, and people get really attached to certain things, and so yeah, I'll do that with people as well, and grocery tours, and and making over their pantry and stuff like that.
That's interesting. What's something, if you could, this may be impossible to answer, but I'm going to just try. What's one thing that's in a lot of people's medicine cabinets that you would suggest they ditch and replace with something more healthy?
Oh, in medicine cabinets.
Yeah, I know that was not our topic at all. So
like, there's so many of them. There's so many like little things that I think are really effective. So I guess I swear by oil of oregano for if I'm coming down with like a cold or a flu. It's antibacterial and antiviral.
What do you do with it?
You just put a little bit either in a glass of water or you put a little under your tongue and you take it like every, 3 to 4 hours essentially. And it's knocked out like so many viruses for me. And then it's kind of a cure-all. It could be used in place of like to disinfect a cut or for skin conditions. You could use it topically. It's like one of those things that can use a lot. And then my other one, I guess, would also be coconut oil, which can be used as, that's more for like personal care things, but it can be used as a lotion. It can be used as a hair conditioner. It can be used as a shaving cream. It can also be used to heal wounds. I use it as an eye makeup remover to wash your face. It can be used as a toothpaste. It literally can like be the solve. Can kind of do everything. So it's a good thing to travel with also, because if you run out of something, it usually can take place of it.
Solves a lot of problems.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I started working with oregano oil. When I first did that, I would put it in my smoothies, and I never understood why my entire smoothie would taste like oregano from like the tiniest drop of oregano oil.
Pizza or so. It makes everything taste like pizza. Yeah, I think the thing is you have to just have it by itself or with water because it's so potent that it overpowers anything else.
Oregano's like that, right? Like if you cook with fresh oregano, it's easy to add just one sprig too much, it seems. I had one follow-up question. It says that you studied holistic nutrition education at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. That is fascinating. Can you tell us what that means?
Yeah, so that's why I'd actually had culinary training before that. So I went to the Natural Gourmet Institute for Food and Health. So that was half holistic dietary theories and then culinary techniques. And then so that I started working as a chef and cooking privately for people. And And then I think I also wanted to be able to work with people on a level who maybe, not everyone can have a private chef of how, I'm not in that realm. And so I followed up to get a health coaching certificate. And I went to the program when it was in New York City. So I flew there like once or twice a month, and having speakers. What's really great about that program is you're introduced to a lot of different like teachers and thought leaders within the nutrition and wellness world. And then you can kind of like pick and choose the things that speak to you, or like, where your interests lie. So, and then since then I've also been working as doing coaching and consulting and more like teaching, following that training. So,
hey, did you know?
Hey, Kate, did you know that the red food coloring carmine used in Skittles and other candies is made from boiled cochineal bugs?
No.
Yeah, cochineal bugs are a type of beetle which live on cactuses of Mexico, Central America, and other warm regions.
Oh my God. So yet another bummer for vegetarians. Apparently anything with red food coloring in it isn't vegetarian then, huh?
Pretty much. Tough times.
Wow.
So I've been a vegetarian since 1995.
Well, a pescatarian, to be clear, right? Okay.
Well, I was vegetarian in the beginning, right, in 95. And so I really spent those first several years not eating healthy as a vegetarian. And then over the years, I brought fish back in. And so it took me so long to learn how to eat like healthy. So what's your biggest advice to tell us how can we eat healthy as a vegetarian? Like, what are the few basic things that if you're going to go vegetarian, that a person has to be thinking about?
Yeah. So I guess the advice I would give, and it's advice I give for everyone, whether you're, vegetarian, pescatarian, or, an omnivore, is when you think about balancing your meals and your snacks, you always have to have to think of balancing protein, fiber, and healthy fat. And if you have all three of those things, that's going to help keep your blood sugar levels stable. It's going to ward off cravings, and it's going to give you the essential macronutrients and, vitamins and energy that you need. I think the thing is when you're a vegetarian is it can be harder to find protein sources or to easily forget about the protein source.
Which is what I would do.
Yeah. So you have to, I think it's a little bit more work being a vegetarian or being on any sort of limited diet sometimes. I think a lot of times people are missing protein, and then I think sometimes too a lot of people are missing fats or healthy fats, and they're wondering why they're hungry all the time, or then why they're eating bags of gummy candy or something like that. And so so to kind of be thinking about that. And I think sometimes too, I'm no longer vegetarian. I was when I went to culinary school, and that's probably I teach mostly vegetarian and gluten-free cooking classes. But I think I actually got interested in cooking being a vegetarian because you are so much more limited, and you have to get a little more creative and find balance and find ways of enjoying things. So the really important protein pieces when you're a vegetarian are going to be like nuts and seeds and beans and legumes. And I think you also have to figure out ways of making it kind of fresh or playing around with like textures of some of those things too. Because you can get, bored of eating beans all the time. And if you do include some fish or some eggs, those, are also really good.
That's really great. Because when I first took meat out, I didn't really understand this whole concept of cooking and that you actually had to cook food.
Yeah. So I think again, when you're on any sort of a limited diet, you really do have to learn to cook. Like it's very hard to have a healthy diet without doing so. So
would you say it's a pretty common mistake that people, when they go vegetarian, that they automatically up the bad fats as opposed to the good fats? Is that pretty typical?
Not necessarily. I think they up the carbohydrates a lot. And I think sometimes, so I think that's usually what gets a little out of whack. And then a lot of times it's maybe more the bad carbohydrates. So, things like pastas or breads or bagels become more substantive. And so I think kind of, figuring out how to add, if you add in more of like proteins and healthy fats, your need for all those carbohydrates kind of goes down. And then again, focusing more on whole grains is really, helpful too.
One thing I've been thinking about, I wanted to ask is when I come back to fish and I bring tuna back in, what's your whole opinion on the whole mercury in tuna thing, and how often should someone be having tuna, if that's one of their main sort of easy staples, if they're a pescatarian?
Yeah. So my advice on that, with everything, is kind of everything in moderation. Tuna specifically, if you are able to get, wild caught tuna, that's going to do a lot to like reduce the amount of mercury in the tuna. And I also think it tastes much better. But I would say, once a week, maybe twice a week. But yeah, just not having it be something where, it's an everyday meal thing. So.
Okay.
I find when I'm going through, I'm not a vegetarian. I was for a couple of years, and I didn't even like vegetables. It was tough. But it was a long time ago. But I find now that when I'm focusing on eating really healthily, it's really hard for me to find a lean protein source that is as good as chicken. So in order to get a comparable amount of protein in something like beans or tofu, as I would in chicken, it's way more calories and more fat. And so I find that to be a challenge, is to get enough protein without the calories if I'm trying to keep that limited.
Right. And I think it just is a shift. So you're kind of shifting some other things, but those also should be more of the like your main sources of carbohydrates, would also be coming from, the beans. Nuts and seeds are going to be higher calorie, but they're going to be lower carbohydrate. And tofu actually is also pretty low carbohydrate and lower calorie.
But not as low as chicken, right? I mean, that's what I remember being annoyed.
That comes down to your reasons for why you have the diet you do, or, or why you're adhering to something. And in general, I try to get people to tune into like, the things that work for them, and maybe less so about counting calories and more about just feeling good and feeling full and balanced. But yeah, that's a good point.
Darn, I was hoping you were going to come up with a secret non-meat lean protein source that had not occurred to us before.
What good are you, Amanda?
So here's one of the questions we ask everybody. How do you stay healthy in a really tasty world?
I guess, this is where it is really, I guess maybe it's the boring answer about like balance and moderation. I love food, and I love eating, and I love going out to eat. And I think I really eat everything. I'm not a picky eater. There aren't things that I don't like. But I think I kind of know the foods that like, make me feel good, and the foods that don't make me feel so good. And so it's kind of, if I, have something that's maybe a little heavier, just naturally the next day, I'm probably not, gonna, I may gravitate towards something lighter. So I think it's, probably something I've been practicing for a while, but it's not really that much like effort or thought. I think it just comes down to, again, like tuning into how I'm feeling and what I'm actually hungry for and what I actually want. And that's where I think it's pretty powerful when you do just listen to yourself and your body. You have a way of, kind of, it takes a lot of the struggle around diet and food.
And how do you do that with love and compassion towards yourself and others?
So I think that's how you do it, is maybe having just some compassion of it, and not being something of like, oh my gosh, I ate an entire pizza, now I can't eat for 2 days or whatnot. Just kind of when it is more about just your lifestyle and less about a diet, it just becomes like, oh, well, tomorrow I'm going to have a salad or whatever it is. I think you can't really have a healthy lifestyle and a healthy diet without having some compassion and some mindfulness around your relationship with food and around the choices that you're making.
Did you used to beat yourself up? Like if you ate poorly or too much, and did you overcome that, or was that always sort of your way?
No, for a very long time, I think I did that, and I had a lot of guilt around food, and, was always, labeling things as good and bad, and was, really scared of certain foods. And I think then that was a part of my education, is when I started to learn more, I kind of realized that, that there doesn't need to be, fear around food so much, and you can actually be like empowered by making good choices. And so
when I was reading on your website, one of the things I was struck by, it's so interesting you say that, is you talk about that whole about how not to be afraid of food. And I thought that's such an interesting idea. I mean, I think I sort of knew that on some level, but I think just the way you phrased it was really great, because there is this whole thing that you've really got to understand a food. You got to understand its makeup. You got to understand what it's going to do for you. So you're not afraid of it. I found that really powerful.
Yeah. And I think that's like food is one of those things that we have to have every day. So there's not something where we can just decide, whoa, I'm not eating food anymore. But I think because of that, people have like connections and associations with it that like run really deep. And food, sure, we know it's our fuel and it's good for us, but it's also something that's social and it's something that's cultural. And it's something, how we share love with people and, spend time with people. And
it's hedonistic, potentially. It gives us pleasure. Mm-hmm.
Yes, how we nurture ourselves and how we value ourselves. And so I think all of those pieces from it makes it a pretty complex relationship. And I think more often than not, people have a lot of, labels around food and diet that aren't, necessarily like that healthy, even if they think that they are. So I think you run into that a lot too.
Did you know? Hey, Kate, did you know that the tea bag was created by accident?
No. How does one accidentally create a tea bag?
I'm so glad you asked. Well, Thomas Sullivan, he was a New York tea merchant. He started to send samples of tea to his customers in small silken bags. And some just assumed that these were supposed to be dipped right away in hot water.
That's hilarious. It was people making a mistake. I love that.
Yeah. And they started complaining that they thought the fabric was too thick and enough of the flavor couldn't get out. So then he just created a thinner tea bag. One of the other things you say, which I loved what you said, is to nourish yourself with confidence. And I love that phrase because particularly when you're talking about learning about food and how not to be afraid of food, I thought that's such a great thing. As I think sometimes people forget that getting confidence in how to work with food and what food works for them is a process. It doesn't come overnight. And I think sometimes a lot of people expect it to.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. It very much is a practice and a lifestyle.
And now you're at the point that when your host offers you cake, you'll eat the cake and not feel bad about it.
Of course I would have the cake. And I'm sure there was a time in my life where I wouldn't have eaten the cake and then it would have been very socially awkward. And
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Right. That makes sense. So speaking of cake, you have some thoughts, I believe, on helping people deal with sugar and caffeine addictions. Is there anything you can offer us about that?
Yeah. So in a nutshell, I think those are two of the hardest food groups that I think people have really strong like attachments and addictions to.
Totally.
And so, and I feel like everybody has something, and I've worked with probably, hundreds and hundreds of clients, and everybody has some food group that for them is like they're a really tricky thing. And for me, it was like caffeine for a really long time. I probably would have like 8 cups of coffee a day and was just like a total maniac. And I think kind of the thing about those, what I like to think about our coffee and sugars, they give us like false energy. And so a lot of times, and what happens is, I do the whole analogy of, being like our energy is, stored in like a bank account, and that sugar and caffeine is like putting it on credit. So it's kind of like you have enough in your reserves. So a lot of times too, if we keep going towards those like false quick energies, we become really depleted, and your adrenals get depleted, and it becomes hard to survive without them. So, it's kind of about getting back into that balance and finding what other pieces might be missing from your diet. And I know with sugar a lot, again, there's a big protein piece. A lot of times if you're not getting, again, that good like protein, fiber, and healthy fats in your meals and your snacks, your blood sugar levels crash and you're looking for a jolt more. So you're more likely to want to go towards something sweet or, caffeine, something to give you a little bit of an energy. And when you can kind of balance your blood sugars levels out, a lot of times those cravings kind of go away. I usually say a craving of any sort is a sign of some sort of imbalance. So it's kind of then just trying to piece what your imbalance might be.
That makes so much sense. That was really, really well explained. Thank you.
Okay.
What would you say is the best advice about health, wellness, and nutrition that you have ever received?
I think I'm not sure if you're familiar, and this is probably just from like, I've seen a lot of, I've had a lot of teachers and I've seen a lot of speakers and read a lot of books, and probably one that for me like really shifted things was, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Janine Roth. She writes a lot about like emotional eating and women's relationship with food and kind of overcoming overeating and she's really wonderful books. And I think in general, I think the first book of hers I read talked about that. And we touched on this a little bit about, that foods aren't like bad and good. I think we're so quick to label foods as like, oh, that's bad, or that's bad for me, or that's fattening, or I can't eat that, there are too many calories, or, we create a lot of labels around food. And when you actually take off a lot of those labels, I think I had, was always so scared that if I did that, like, oh, I can't trust myself, or I'll go crazy, or I'm going to only eat pizza every day, or, if I really eat what I want, but I think if you actually do that and allow yourself kind of to trust yourself to make good choices, you kind of realize you tune just into a little bit more of what, your body wants and what's going to actually like feed your hunger more so. And I think it does. It's kind of, if you do trust yourself, and it's kind of amazing that a lot of that other stuff around food and diet just kind of goes away. And I know for me at that point, I had been wanting maybe to like lose some weight and was like trying too hard to diet, and kind of by letting go of a lot of those labels or letting myself just eat what I wanted to, I think it was something where I just kind of effortlessly, lost weight. So
that really speaks well to what you said earlier about like confidence, and how do you build confidence, and how do you nourish yourself in confidence.
So much of it is just about not trusting yourself. So yeah.
Have you ever had a significant weight issue?
Yeah, I've been probably really underweight before. I had an eating disorder in college. I had really disordered eating, and I was really underweight. And then I think as I started getting better from that, I probably, which is a normal kind of pendulum shift of when I started eating more and allowing myself to eat, then it became a little bit of the reverse, where I maybe started eating too much and probably was a little, I don't know that I would say I was overweight. I was probably just not at a weight that was good for my body. So then it was kind of how, I went from one extreme to a little bit of the other, and then kind of wound up somewhere in the middle. So, yeah.
Is there a difference between eating disorder and the phrase disordered eating?
I guess it comes down to like, semantics. And I guess I was never also like clinically diagnosed. I was going to therapy for this year. Could be a whole episode, but my mother was anorexic my whole life growing up. And
wow.
I think that, and it was something I was aware of very much so. And she was, clinically diagnosed and was in treatment for it most of my childhood. And when I went away to college, then I started having a lot of similar behavior. And I think it was because it was something I was very familiar with. I was able to, get a hold of it before it became too bad. But it's definitely something that, is very, close to me, something I'm very familiar with from firsthand experience and, from, loving someone going through that also.
Yeah.
You get that. That's huge.
Right. Well, how amazing that you used that and made a career out of it, really. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
right?
It's pretty incredible.
When I heard you use the phrase disordered eating, my heart just grew. I thought, she gets me. That's how my eating feels. I'm like, it's so chaotic sometimes. It's so out of order. I can't bear it.
Yeah. I think a lot of times it's sometimes just the severity of our disordered eating, but I think most people at some time or another have disordered eating, but that doesn't necessarily mean, it's, I guess it is just like you said, like kind of erratic or irrational.
Right.
What are 5 things that are always on your grocery list, and why?
So I always have like the baby arugula, like those little, plastic tubs of it. Yes. And I get very upset if they're out of that, but I'll usually always have some sort of green like that. And then I usually have avocado and hummus, and then some sort of a tortilla. We talked before about those paleo tortillas. I also really like Food for Life makes like a brown rice tortilla that I really like. And then probably I always have like lemons or olive oil or something like that, or probably, and then I could eat some form of that most days.
Totally. Yeah, that sounds excellent.
Sounds awesome.
What if we were going to do one thing differently this week? What would that be? If you were going to leave us and all of us who are listening with like one substantial, like, take a look at this. Consider this.
Sure. So my favorite tip whenever I work with people to, kind of a little bit of an experiment or a challenge is to start your day with like a cup of warm water and half a lemon squeezed into it. You could also add a little pinch of cayenne pepper. What this does is it helps like start your day. It like alkalizes your body. So talking about like acid and alkaline balance, a lot of us have too much, we eat too many acid producing foods, which can lead to a lot of cravings and also to a lot of chronic illness and energy deprivation. And so starting your day more alkaline can help kind of start, it's kind of like starting on the right note. And it can like it's one of those, I think it's a little bit of a magic trick of like it effortlessly can just, it makes you also tend to just naturally crave healthier things. And it could do a lot also to reduce coffee, caffeine, and sugar addictions. And a lot of people also report like feeling, more energized or alert in the morning. So it's one of those things I suggest to people and they kind of they're not that interested in it or think it's not for them. And then they'll come back a week later and are like, really surprised that it was really helpful. So that is usually something I like to suggest.
That's fabulous. Do you have an opinion, speaking of alkaline, do you have an opinion about adding those alkaline drops to your drinking water? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. And I guess I've kind of done that. I think, again, though, just adding like lemon or I'll add even like liquid chlorophyll or something like that, which kind of naturally, are naturally more alkaline foods. But yeah, I guess I'm kind of just like, I don't really get the way these drops work. And maybe I could do more like research or study on them.
Okay. No, just curious. I have a lot of clients who have acid reflux issues. And so they've been told to avoid lemon. And so they're trying to find other ways to bring alkaline in their system.
It would be good for them. Like aloe vera, like liquid aloe vera.
Really? Thank you. That's terrific.
Yeah. I also have acid reflux. So I take a little aloe vera every morning and it's really helpful.
Find it on Amazon.
Do you have it, Rick, also?
Yeah, I love that.
How I was going to say the door on this. All right.
I was going to say I'm one of those people, Amanda, that really shoo-shooed the whole, I'm not having hot water and lemon or lime. I won't. And then, of course, I did it. And then I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah. It's funny, like how many, you're one of them.
I fought it for so long. Yeah, I am one of them. Yeah.
Or you kind of just think like, what's that really going to do? But it's just, it's such a small thing, but it's
totally. And when you're working with someone, you're like, this is what I'm paying you for.
But isn't it funny how I find that in my own coaching as well as a coach, the things that are simple are the easiest to blow off because they seem so simple. It's sort of also like for exercise, like, well, what's walking really going to do for me? It's just walking.
Exactly. It's really important. I think that sometimes it's focusing on like, what are the small shifts that can actually have, big results or make a big difference. So, and
we want dramatic shifts, Amanda. We want the secret dramatic things that we would never have thought of and that no one can do.
While paying for one session. Well, this is great. Well, Amanda, how do people find you and follow you?
So my website, amandaskripp.com. And then also, that's also my handle on most forms of social media too. So on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram.
Excellent. Well, Amanda, thank you so much. This has been terrific.
Yeah, thank you. This was fun.
And thank all of you for listening. So if you want more information on Amanda, we'll put a link on our website, youwon'tbelievewhatIate.com. You can also follow us on Facebook at You Won't Believe What I Ate Last Night. And remember, if you have anything you want to share with us, any stories, remember, if you tell us what you ate last night, you can record an audio file on your phone and send that right into us. And of course, any questions, thoughts, comments, you can always email to youwon'tbelievewhatIate@gmail.com.
And definitely follow us on YouTube, iTunes, or SoundCloud. And YouTube, on our YouTube channel, we have some little extra videos, and there's going to be some more stuff coming up soon. So we definitely recommend you follow us on YouTube. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.